Hello, everyone. Uh, Welcome again. Today we are going to be talking about The Good Woman of Sichuan by Bertolt Brecht. Um, so let us go ahead and get started here. So, The Good Woman of Sichuan is also known as The Good Person of Sichuan or The Good Man of Sichuan. The particular pronoun is in German because Brecht is German, right? It's Mensch, right? And so it could be person, good man, also translated good soul of Sichuan. But for our purposes, we'll just talk about the good woman of Sichuan. Sichuan. Incidentally, the little background here is in Sichuan, nice pastoral, um, almost Himalayan place. So, where is Sichuan, China? So it's a province right here. You can see it in red. It's in southwestern, what the Chinese would consider southwestern China. It is known for having beautiful mountains, right? Pandas live in that particular province, among others. Um, where you would encounter the word Sichuan is probably most likely in its cuisine, right? The Sichuan peppercorn is famously spicy and citrusy and mouth numbing. The cuisine of Sichuan province. It's one of the eight main kind of cuisines in China, but it's known as being very kind of hot and spicy and garlicky and rich and that kind of thing. But so this play, Brecht decided to set it in a fictionalized but Sichuan in 1941, or just right before that, during the interwar period. Now, what was going on in China? You know, in the early 40s in the 20th century. Now, almost what wasn't going on in China at that time? And I'm being completely serious when I say if you were to pick a country and about a 40-year period, um, and thought, where is a country that changed the most in 40 years in the entire, history of the world? You would make a very, very good case of saying that China, mainland China, between, 1910 and 1950 changed quite a bit, right? So we all have maybe this conception of dynastic China, right? A whole bunch of dynasties, imperial dynasties of China. The last one, the Qing dynasty, ended in 1912. And so what was going on in China in 1941? Well, first of all, there was the Second Sino-Japanese War, right, between China and Japan, right? That was going on between 1937 and 1945, a part of broader, World War II, right, going on between 1939 and 1945. There was also in the middle of this kind of war with Japan as a part of the Second World War, there was also a pause in the Chinese Civil War, which took place between 1927 and 1949. Now, all of this was under kind of the political umbrella of the Republic of China, which um, was founded in 1912, right after the dynasty, right after the Qing dynasty, up until 1949, when the People's Republic of China was proclaimed. Right, and so uh, in China during the Qing dynasty, and that the last dynasty in the very early parts of the 20th century, um, that particular dynasty was relatively weak on the world stage. Right, China. Kind of militarily in terms of its foreign policy and in terms of its kind of like native technology and industry was somewhat less developed than a lot of European countries and Western countries, and even compared with its neighbor, Japan. And as such, at the beginning of the 20th century, it was seen in China as a period kind of international humiliation, right? A lot of unequal treaties were foisted upon China by different European countries and Western countries who had different kind of spheres of influence. Whereas, like Hong Kong was under the British sphere of influence, Shanghai was under the French sphere of influence, Macau was under the Portuguese sphere of uh, influence. Um, Qingdao was under the German sphere of influence, which is why the most famous beer in China is Qingdao, because wherever Germans go, they build a brewery. Um, I'll get to that in a second. Um, but so after that, the country was relatively weak, right? The dynasty was relatively weak. There were a whole bunch of warlords going on. There was a lot of fighting, a lot of different uh, factions, right? There was obviously Japan who came over and uh, ruined China, did a lot of atrocities. There was also kind of the official kind of government, the Republic of China, or the Kuomintang, right? They were one other faction. There was also the communists, right? Another faction, and they all kind of fought and did atrocities against each other, and it was just ridiculous. But right during this time, during this interwar between World War I and World War II period, this is a time that China started to kind of adopt a little bit more Western thought, right? Especially after the collapse of the dynasties, a lot of intellectuals in China thought, well, why don't we modernize? Why don't we bring in a whole bunch of these Western concepts like, republicanism and capitalism, right? um, which this particular period in China was a period of flux. It was a period of uncertainty in terms of political structures broadly. Um, People did not know what was going to happen next, um, which is very rare, right, in the history of China up until this point. Um, I think it is notable that I think the first line and the first stage direction in this play is talking about the a half westernized town in the province of Sichuan. Um, Now, all of that context being said, it is also somewhat unimportant that this play takes place in Sichuan. Now, there is, if when you read it, there is actually very little about the play that is specifically Chinese, right? The names certainly are, and the setting is, but there's very little about the play that you couldn't adapt with a couple of changes to another period in time, right? Uh, and this is important because Brecht chose this to not tell a story about China per se, but to tell a story in China that was representative of something else that he really wanted to talk about, right? He really wanted to talk about, honestly, capitalism and economic structures and morality, and not necessarily specific to China, which is something that he did a lot in epic theater, right? Which is what we're going to talk about a little bit later when we get to Brecht next week and go into a little bit more detail about the Verfremdungseffect and whatnot. But let's talk about the Good Woman of Sichuan a little bit. So it was written by Brecht in 1941. He wrote it while he was in Los Angeles. Even though he is a German person, right? He was in LA, in World War II, because Germany was having some issues with free thought and leftists during the Nazi era. I wanted to point out the two faces of your main character, right? Shunta and Shweta. The characters for Shanta or Shunta kind of maybe mean either like liquid morality or even submerged morality. And then Shweta or Tsweta could mean like to attain like a high mountain. And even those two different names kind of tell you a little bit about the different facets of this person, right? Where one seems to be drowning in their own kind of morals, right? Shanta, and Shui Da literally is above and something that is attained in a very kind of uh, almost capitalist kind of way. Okay? Now, this play, as you read it, you can tell it is extremely didactic. And what do I mean by didactic? It is intended primarily to teach a moral lesson. Now, some pieces of art can be didactic, but stealthily. This is not one of those. Right? This play wears it very proudly on its sleeve that it wants you to think very specifically about the morality of certain kinds of structures of society, right? So when we look at this play, right? So broadly speaking, right, in terms of the plot, right? So there are these gods walking around, they're trying to find a good person, right? And they stumble upon Shante, who is a prostitute. She's, on the lower economic rung of society. Um, but she is a good person in the way that she is willing to sacrifice her own economic well-being, right? She is going to not spend the night with any clients, but instead give the gods somewhere to stay because they're looking for somewhere to stay. Now, the gods look at this and say, oh, this means that she is a good person. So we are going to obviously test her. So we're going to give her a little bit of wealth and see if she can remain a good person, right? Um, and so then, of course, throughout the play, she finds that these qualities that the gods found in her that were good actually meant that people were walking all over her, right? She could not both maintain her goodness and also her livelihood. And so she invents this alter ego of Shueta, her bad cousin who comes to town. And he is not a pushover like she is, right? This alter ego of hers. He is firm. He is advocating very much for himself. He's a bit of a jerk. Um, but she has to invent this alter ego to survive, right? And uh, because she cannot in this kind of dual life and trying to maintain this fiction wears on her, right? Someone hears Shante crying, and when they walk in the door, it's really Shui Da, right? And they assume that this bad cousin killed his good cousin, put him on trial, and the gods are brought in to be, judges. Shueisha says, "Well, yeah, I'll let you know what's really going on, but we have to clear the courtroom so I can tell you a secret." And of course, reveals to the gods that she is Shante, and they say, "Oh, great, you're a good person. That means that you're a good person. You have these things. You should not be Shante anymore. You should really be a good person. This is great. This is proof that a good person can, prosper." And my favorite scene is at the very end. She says, "Yeah, but wait a minute. You're just going to leave me here. Now I don't have this fiction anymore. I cannot be good in this society, in this structure that you have set up. I cannot both survive and be good." Right. And what I like about this play, especially because we read Medea toward the beginning, is that there is an inversion of Aristotelian drama, not even just a straight rejection or not doing Aristotelian drama, but it takes it and it looks at it from a different angle and really kind of inverts it. Right? The first thing would be if we, as we remember in Medea, she rides away in a golden chariot, right? The gods come down, or there's a gift from the gods, this golden chariot, and she gets whisked away, right? Um, and in a weird mirroring of that, um, in this play, the gods are whisked away, but leaving her there, and they seem to be perfectly happy in in their kind of moral judgment on her and saying, "You're a good person. This is great." But as they leave, her problems are not solved. Her problems are actually worsened by the fact that they interfered. So it's less of a Deus ex machina, well, and it's more of a, I don't know, whatever the bad thing of a Deus ex machina is. Um, and whereas in Aristotle, right, um, and especially in neoclassical drama, you had the idea of good people being rewarded for their upstanding morals and bad people being punished for their bad morals. Now, in this play, there is absolutely the axis of good versus bad, and also rewarded versus punished. But in this play, people are rewarded for acting badly and punished for acting well, which is not kind of a nihilist, like, well, nothing really matters kind of thing. It is calling into question what actually good is. Like, is good moral rightness? Is good treating other people well? Or is goodness actually making sure that you survive? right? And does it matter that though that good and things that are beneficial for you and things that are beneficial for others might actually be opposite? And what does that mean about a society that sets us up in opposition to others, right? And so Brecht wants us to ask those sorts of questions about society at large, not about, he doesn't want us to ponder people's interior morality per se, but really the morality of the system, right? Which is very different, right, than what Aristotle thought was good drama, right? Aristotelian drama kind of has the idea of a tragic flaw. Now, and how some kind of defect in someone's character kind of brings them low inevitably, which this is in Sichuan. It's absolutely an inversion of that, because Shante's, the thing that brings her down is not really something inherent to her that is a flaw. Right? The thing that brings her down is something that is praised about her. So, what is the inherent flaw that brings her down? It's not really hers. It's really the society's. Right? And a couple of things that Brecht would say, the epic drama, right, which is what he called his type of drama, as opposed to Aristotelian drama, right? With its materialistic standpoint and its lack of interest in any investment of its spectators' emotions, knows no objective but only a finishing point, and is familiar with a different kind of chain whose course need not be a straight one, but may require well be in curves or even in leaps, right? So this is commenting pretty directly on the idea of a unified action, right? Of one plot that has a beginning, middle, and end. And he says, well, in Aristotelian drama, the journey, right, the plot is the thing that is the most important. How do we see that this happens? But in his epic drama, it's not really the plot that is the point. It's where you end up, and what where you end up shows and tells you about the broader kind of structures of society. Because Brecht was absolutely about uh, seeing his play and relating it to the audience themselves, right? He talked about in an essay, just as it, his epic drama, refrains from handing its hero over to the world as if it were his inescapable fate. So it would not dream of handing the spectator over to an inspiring theatrical experience. And he's meaning this as a negative, right? An inspiring theatrical experience is not what he wants. Anxious to teach the spectator a quite definite practical attitude directed towards changing the world, it must begin by making him adopt in the theater a quite different attitude from what he is used to, right? And pardon the male pronouns, but this is what Brecht's words were. And so, as opposed to Aristotle, who his whole idea was to tell you, okay, these are the step by step ways in order to evoke this emotional empathy from the audience. This pity and fear is, two different things, the two different qualities of empathy, right? From the audience to someone on stage, make you feel for them and as them. Brecht says, no, that's not the point. The point is not kind of an emotional investment in the people. It is kind of a distance, almost objective view of why people are the way they are. And you can see sadness, but the point is not to empathize with it and to feel sad with it. It is to notice that that thing that is happening is a bad thing, and to make a moral judgment. And so, how do we change it? So, we are going to talk quite a bit more about Brecht next week. We're going to, again, talk a little bit more about epic theater, about Brecht himself, his particular politics, the Verfremdungseffekt, which is a very fun word to say. I'm going to go ahead and put up this quiz. Incidentally, for those of you who have made it to this end, there is one super, super secret extra credit for those of you who are seeing this. By Thursday at noon, if you send me, by Canvas, a recipe that has Sichuan peppercorns in it, you will get 5 extra points. So, super secret. Anyway, hope you all are having a good day. Hope you have a nice November. Cool. and I will see you soon.